Joining me now are three women and a man. Irfa Jan is a spokesperson in National Conference, but she has a strong view on this. She comes from Jammu and Kashmir. Zakia Soman is women rights activist, co-founder Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, and she was among those who had stood up on the triple talaq issue. Yashpal Suvarna is vice president in Udupi college, and Farheen is an IT consultant in Bengaluru. I'm going to get each of them to react to what they've heard legally and politically. Why don't I start with you, Farheen, because you are a young IT consultant there in Bengaluru. You tell us, as a young Muslim woman, how do you see this verdict playing out? What, according to you, is the right way forward? Do you believe you're wearing a hijab? Should Muslim women be given that freedom of choice? Should an 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl, does she really have choice over it, or does her family impose it on her?
Absolutely. I think this is a matter of choice for every single child or woman, and I think it should be left to them to decide whether or not they choose to wear that hijab.
But does an 8-year-old have a choice, ma'am? Does an 8-year-old have a choice? This issue is being raised in Iran as well in a very different context, that actually society is not even giving women the real choice, especially young women.
Well, that is a misconception in my thinking, because it's not something that has been forced on anybody. I'm going back to my own case. I've grown up, born, raised in Bangalore, and never worn a hijab till I realized that the hijab is a part of my identity. My religion asks or expects of me to wear it, and I think I'm perfectly comfortable wearing it. And I think this right should be given to every single woman who should be able to make that choice.
But Farheen, sorry to intervene. A decade ago, many women didn't wear it. So what changed suddenly?
I was one of those women who didn't wear it a decade ago. But awareness, coming to understand what is expected of me, and then making a conscious decision is something that everybody should be allowed to do. If we're allowed to take up whatever course or whatever career we want to go into, then we should also be allowed to dress in a way that is humble. We're not being flashy, we're not being distractive, we're not taking ourselves away from the main education platform. We're not doing something that is going to make people feel like there's someone out of place in that institution. We're only being humble, we're only being simple. We're only covering up. We're not exposing, on the other hand.
You don't see it as the rise of conservatism, the rise of radical ideas that are forcing women like you, who earlier were not wearing hijab, to wear it today?
I don't think so. No. For me, it was never a forced decision. It was a conscious decision. And I think most women now are doing it not because they probably had that back of their mind, you know, that we're going to do it one day. Now that those emotions are coming to the surface and they feel like now's the time. Now I have to show that I'm going to exercise my right, and I'm going to do what I think is best for me.
Irfa Jan is joining me from Jammu and Kashmir. Irfa, what's your view? Do you believe a woman really has that choice today in Islamic societies, even in this country? Or,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Rajdeep Desai, I am a Muslim woman sitting right here in front of you and not wearing a hijab. So I guess we do have the choice, and for 1 millionth time, Muslim women do not need saviors. We do not need men and people coming from all sides of the society and saying, we want to save you. Instead, we need saviors like the kind of Mr. Dhulia, who will ease our access to educational institutions like he did. It's actually quite ironical that people who on one hand pretend to save Muslim women from patriarchy also happen to be the same women who would want more and more restrictions on the right of Muslim women to clothe themselves when they access educational institutions. It also happens to be the same people who would rather want us out of those educational institutions and say, listen, we are throwing you out of the educational institution because we want to save you.
No, they are calling for uniformity. In fact, they are calling what the Justice Gupta argument is uniformity. That if other school, that no special provisions can be made for any religion when it comes to dress code.
You see, when it comes to uniformity, we cannot have a kind of uniformity that does not take into account the diversity. For example, I cannot open a school and make beef curry the lunch menu. because I will have to take into consideration the fact that people of all religious, beef curry or pork curry, for example, because I will have to take into consideration that people of all religious different religious communities are going to be attending my school. If we look at uniformity, we have seen schools in the UK, schools in the United States of America make reasonable accommodations for Hindus, for Sikhs, for Muslims by allowing headscarves and turbans to be a part of the uniform. Reasonable accommodation is a perfectly acceptable way, and it's a perfectly acceptable thing in a uniformity. It does not, in fact, it brings more diversity into uniformity. Mr. Dhulia,
you know, very interestingly, you use the word reasonable accommodation. Justice Gupta used, of course, reasonable restriction as he saw what the Karnataka schools were doing. But Zakia Soman, can this fit in with your, you know, when you stood up against triple talaq, many saw triple talaq as being essentially patriarchal, essentially being anti-woman, therefore it had to go. Does the same rule apply to hijab in your view? You're not wearing a hijab, neither is Irfa.
Yeah, so I think here the situation is somewhat different, and the girls are caught between the crossfires of patriarchy masquerading as religion on the one hand, and the insidious politics of religious polarization on the other. And what we are playing with here is the future of the girls. Right to education is a fundamental right, as is right to privacy and right to freedom of expression. But on the one hand, the parents will not allow the girls to go to school without hijab, and the schools will deny them entry into the classroom precisely because of the hijab. So I think here the parents, the society, the community, the education institution, even those sitting in power, everybody is being unfair to the girls. Reform in the Muslim community, equality and justice for Muslim women is a very serious issue. It cannot be brought about top down. It cannot be bludgeoned through these kind of blows. It's a time-consuming, organic kind of a process. And for a girl to realize and understand that she never had a choice, that hijab is a patriarchal imposition. For a girl to understand that, she has to undergo the journey of education, of empowerment.
Do you see it as a patriarchal, ma'am? Do you see it as a patriarchal imposition?
It is a patriarchal imposition, doubtless.
Okay.
It is not mandatory in Islam. It is a patriarchal imposition. It is a regressive practice, and I am 200% against it.
Okay.
But when the girl says that it is her choice, for her to understand that she really has no choice, she is conditioned by social pressure. To understand that, she needs to undergo the education journey, which has now been halted because of this ill kind of a move.
Okay, let me bring in Yashpal. Let me bring in Yashpal Suvarna from Udupi College. Are you going to? Do you believe that you are going to? How do you see this judgment now playing out on the ground? Will colleges like yours continue to say that if a girl comes with a hijab, we will not admit her? Is that part of your admission policy, Mr. Suvarna? You're on mute. Is that part of your admission policy, Mr. Suvarna? You've got to unmute your mic and then speak, sir. Unmute it. Unfortunately, we are not being able to get through to Mr. Suvarna because remember, we would have liked. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you tell us. Are you going to make it mandatory? Continue to make it mandatory for admission to wear a hijab?
Yeah, from the 2004, our college have framed the rules and regulations on to run a college in a disciplinary manner. There should not be discrimination. There should not be every student should be treated equal. So from the year 2004, the same rules and regulations have been followed.
So are you saying from 2004 your college followed the rule that girls with hijab cannot enter college?
No. Till 2021 December, in that college. After the 2021 December 31st, that 6 girls started creating issues. Their intention was to curb the future of the poor girls who are coming to that government college. That was their intention.
No, I want to understand from you, Mr. Suvarna, until 2021 you did not stop a girl from coming to college with a hijab. Am I correct or not?
No one student was wearing hijab to that college.
So you're saying
there was no issue in that college. Huh?
You're saying they started wearing the hijab only after December 2021?
21 December 31st they started.
So today if they come to college tomorrow with a hijab, will you stop them or will you not allow them?
No, if the rules have been framed in that institution, that each and every one student should be treated equally.
When were these rules framed? Which year?
From 2004 itself. You have produced the document.
Okay, you're saying, okay, that's important. You're claiming that the rules were framed in 2004 itself. Therefore, if these are the rules, in a way that colleges are setting, how do you see this, Irfa? If these are the rules, do the colleges' rules prevail or the girls' choice prevail? Irfa?
No, a college or institution.
This is a government college.
Yes.
As far as I can understand, this is a government college.
Yes, it is.
And a government college which is funded by the taxpayers. And essentially that means this government college rules cannot override the fundamental rights that the Constitution of India provides to each one of us. So the government college cannot make me do something through its rules which is against my dignity and which is against my chastity and which I consider to be chastity. Again, it's
but
a very...
from 2004 to 2021, no woman wore according to them, the girls did not wear a hijab. They wore a hijab in December 2021.
You see, this
grew up, Rajdeep. They were young at that time. They became teenage girls and they started wearing it. So it's quite understandable that they started wearing it at a later stage in life.
Okay.
Typically.
Okay.
I think,
after all, it is a girls' college. Girls' college.
Okay. Yes, Irfa, very quickly, and then I'll come to you, Fareen, for a final comment. Yes, Irfa.
You see, I think when we constantly say, when did the girls start wearing it, we are constantly trying to probably bring out this conspiracy and give legitimacy to the PFI conspiracy, this radicalization conspiracy, that radicalization conspiracy. The question is, if tomorrow a fresh woman who enrolls herself into this college for the first time decides to wear a college, would the state protect her fundamental rights or not, or would it shut the doors on her?
You're saying it's about the fundamental rights that a girl has. Others will say, Fareen, when I enter a college which already has on its rules that hijab is prohibited, I am entering it of my own volition. I am accepting the rules of the college. The college has its rules framed and given to you in advance.
If these rules were framed ahead of time and people knew that they're entering this institution fully aware that they're not going to be able to practice their religion, then it's up to them what they do. But if this rule didn't exist, which it didn't exist in all these years in Karnataka, all of a sudden you tell us that now you either choose religion or your right to education, then I think that's absolutely not something that we should be able to accept easily. Education is a fundamental right. We all agree on that. So the way you're dressing up should not affect your right to education. Which educational institute you choose is really up to you. But how you dress should be left to the individual. It really does not make sense to go and tell them that you should take off the hijab if you want to be able to go to this particular institution. It does not.
So you're questioning the very rules that the college have set up. Zakia, you want a final word? Is there a middle ground that we can find, given these complex issues, far more nuanced? They are not black and white.
Yes, so uniform cannot be more important than education. The spirit of our constitution is about inclusion, it's about a compassionate view, and even the new education policy talks about including reaching out education to every marginalized child, and that would definitely involve the girl child. Okay. So I think we need to shed extreme views on all sides and keep the girls, their education and their future in mind. And with that in mind, we should, look at this whole matter.
Okay, we leave it there. The complexities of this issue is why perhaps we've had a split verdict. At a time when society is polarized and people will have strong views one way or the other, there is a middle ground that could be found. A middle ground that balances constitutional rights with, of course, schools and colleges and their demands and their restrictions. Can that be found? without hurting religious sentiments? Can that be found while preserving secularism as we see it? Can that be found ensuring equality prevails over all else while also ensuring diversity is celebrated? These are all complex questions that hopefully a wider Supreme Court Constitution bench will answer. And maybe that's what makes India such a fascinating country, that we have these divergent opinions and we can still discuss them in a democratic manner. I appreciate all my guests joining me on what has been our special focus on that big hijab verdict today in the Supreme Court.